make a few comments before I begin the
Of
PowerPoint.
course. Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
then they'll see the PowerPoint, not me. And so,
Well, there should be a way for them to see.
Or us.
oh yeah, I guess that's true. I mean, if I kept my video on,
Yes.
they could probably see a small picture of me in a corner or something like that.
Yeah.
Perhaps I'll do that.
Yeah, that'll work best if they keep you on.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Denise McGraw. I have the honor and privilege of serving as the president of the Junior League of Schenectady and Saratoga Counties, and I am one of the founding members of the Capital Region Anti-Racism Training Initiative. The Junior League and my beloved Junior League, along with Samaritan Counseling, Proctor's Collaborative, the Schenectady County Public Library that's represented here tonight by Karen Bradley, and the United Way of the Greater Capital Region all formed this initiative just a few short months ago. And our initial event, as many of you know, was we welcomed Dr. Ibram Kendi here to discuss his book, How to Be an Anti-Racist. We had initially, thanks to Dr. Horton's leadership, had a community read of his book and a community conversation about that, very much in this same format, Zoom. And Dr. Horton really spent a long time with us, helping us learn some new concepts and new ideas and really getting to the heart of the matter. And so it really did seem like the natural next step was to do a lot more. It was successful, and that's where we wanted to go, was to do more. We had Dr. Kendi here, and then we went into, shortly after that, the 21-day Racial Equity Challenge that was developed by Dr. Eddie Moore and his team. And it's a national program that Erin Bellinger from Samaritan Counseling, who's the director of training for them, helped make our own in the Capital Region. And those of you who just completed it with us and finished up at the end of August really saw that our program took it to the next level. We talked a lot about what you can do in the Capital Region, specific challenges in the Capital Region, and specific action items. And that was something, and that was really the work of Erin and her team and Dr. Horton and Dr. Olson, who really made it an excellent program. And I think the true testament to it is that Eddie Moore got involved with us as we've kind of all gone on this journey together. And we did one of these with Dr. Eddie Moore. And I think that Dr. Eddie Moore and Dr. Horton are gonna, I don't know, the next big thing is gonna be those two. They should get a show. The synergies there and the excitement between the two of them, I really felt like, you know, we really knew we were onto something very, very special here. And again, we thought we needed to do more. And so that's when we realized that we needed to launch the Allyship Institute. Dr. Horton is our director. We are very fortunate to have his leadership. And we're launching this tonight, and he will give us some very specific information about allyship, what it means, about racism, about anti-racism, and all the things that I think many of us have come to expect, that really academic approach, but very usable and very user-friendly. And that's really the hallmark of Dr. Horton's leadership style and his true gift as an educator. Simultaneously, and I know many of you saw in the newspaper this weekend, or you got your emails from us, we are launching a second community read of a book by Princeton professor and MSNBC contributor, Dr. Eddie Glaude. It is a book about the great James Baldwin. It is as timely today as it is when Baldwin was here and Baldwin was experiencing a lot of these things. It's a combination of commentary, social commentary, and a biography of Baldwin. And we are very excited about this initiative. We are going to end our program, our kind of first leg of all of this, with a special visit by Dr. Glaude. And thanks very much to Karen Bradley and her leadership and the Schenectady County Public Library for making it possible. The level of interest from authors to want to work with us is all thanks to the work that Karen has done for decades now to make Schenectady County and the Capital Region and upstate New York a place where authors feel comfortable to come and work with us and want to talk about their work. So we are very excited. That event is on October 6th. But tonight we are going to talk about our Allyship Institute, the programs that are coming in the next few weeks. They will on October 6th. But tonight we are going to talk about our Allyship Institute. Okay, I can't win. Those of you who did this with me last week with Dr. Horton know that we have just had a lot of technical difficulties, but we continue to get through. So we'll have an overview of the program, and then we will get into the nuts and bolts of some of the key information that you will need as you participate in as many or as few of our Institute trainings as you choose to. All of this was possible because of Dr. David Olson. Many of you know him from Samaritan Counseling, where he is the executive director. I have the privilege of knowing him because he is one of the foremost marriage and family therapists. And those foremost gets thrown around a lot. And he's not one of the foremost marriage and family therapists in the region or the state, but he is nationally. He has been a mentor, he has been a friend, and he is the one person who said, I think that's a really good idea. And he pushed me to do even more. The Allyship Institute and the idea of the trainings, they were always first and foremost in his mind because that's what he does. And I think that he has made this better each and every time that he has talked with us and explored new ideas. And the partnership between he, Erin, Dr. Horton is one like I've never seen before. And it's exciting to play a small role of it. So I am going to kick this over to Dr. David Olson to talk to us about what you can expect from our Allyship Institute over the next few weeks. Dr. Olson?
Thank you, Denise. Thank you for that kind introduction. Honor to be with all of you tonight, and more of an honor to be involved in this program, to get to know some of you, to be blessed with Dr. Horton's leadership of our Allyship Institute. who I will be shifting things to very quickly so he can go through his material. When Denise and Aaron and I first began playing with this dream, and it was actually a dream, what if we could get Abram Kendi to the capital region? And connections being what they are, and Denise's genius being what it is, that was made to happen through a wonderful partnership. But then we began to say it needs to be more than that. It needs to be more than the 21-day challenge. We would like to give people the opportunity to really dig in their own unique contexts and in their own unique environments. It's one thing to talk about systemic racism. It's another to think about how does that apply to the uniqueness of our own situations. At Samaritan, we try to think systemically. Aaron has pushed us consistently to think about larger systems, including participation in systemic racism. And so when Denise and Aaron and I began to talk about taking this to the next level, we talked about the possibility of an institute, of the beginning of an infancy where we would start making programs available to a wide variety of people to let them take some of these amazing insights and make application to their unique context. We started off with 1 or 2. It has grown to 5, and hopefully there are more that are about to be born because there's tremendous community interest. And so right now we have 5 scheduled. They are outlined for you in some of the promotional materials you've seen. We're very excited. The first one starts actually this Friday, diversity in the workplace, right? Going to be very interesting. Chamber of Commerce is sponsoring that. They have their own presenter. They have a wonderful trainer. They're going to push us. That will be followed by one that I'm doing with Kiana Miller from Schenectady School District Social Work Department, looking at what does it mean to be anti-racist in the mental health community, right? What does it mean to deal with systemic racism as it impacts our clinical work? What does it mean to sit with clients and patients who exhibit racist ideas? What does it mean to be both therapists and advocates? What does it mean to try to participate in shifting a larger system that obviously needs shifting? And then following that, the following week, the 23rd, there will be a program for parents. Erin Bellinger, Ebony have put together a wonderful program on anti-racist training for parents. Understanding that if we can educate kids at the earliest levels, if we can begin to work with parents, if we can begin to help them with how do they develop anti-racist training for their children, how do they talk to kids about race? How do they talk about the difficult things happening in our culture with increased polarization and some of the incredibly dangerous political things that we're seeing? As they're shaped in that environment and as they inherit our world, how do we help them? How do we work with parents around raising their own children to break some of this systemic racism? And then we'll be working with clergy and congregations. Clergy of many different backgrounds and traditions are at the forefront. Many, such as the Clergy Against Hate, have been active participants. Others are a bit newer to the challenge, but want very much to open the dialogue in their congregations, in their faith communities, to what does it mean to be anti-racist? What does it mean to begin to advocate? What does it mean to begin the conversation? And what does it mean to deal with pushback? I've dealt with a number of clergy over the last few weeks who are being pushed hard as they take a position on anti-racism. How do they deal with that systemic anxiety? How do they deal with the pushback? How do they know how to respond? And so we're blessed with Dr. Stephen Sandage from Boston University, joined by Jonathan from Samaritan, who will be working with the clergy. And then finally, we are excited to offer another new one, which we had hoped would get off the ground, anti-racism and health disparities, with Natasha leading that one. That'll be the last of our series on the 30th. You can sign up for any one of these. You can sign up for all of these. What we're hoping is that you will begin spreading the word. At the conclusion of all this, we've appointed, and he graciously accepted, Dr. Horton to be the director of this program. What we want to be doing at the end of this is then sitting down and saying, what have we learned? What have we learned from mental health workers, from parents, from civic leaders, from clergy? from medical professionals. What have we learned and what do we do next? We don't want this to simply be a one-shot deal. We want to learn, we want to take in the data, we want to look for where we go next. And then what we want to do is how best do we serve the community and continue this wonderful initiative. So without further ado, what I'd like to do is turn it over to our director, Dr. Horton, who has quite a bit of material he'd like to share with us tonight. Dr. Horton.
Thank you, David. And I want to thank everyone for coming in. I particularly want to thank Denise McGraw for her leadership here. It's her vision and a driving force. And I tell you, she's making a lot of great things happen. So even though we're most of you guys are on mute, please silent. Let's give Denise a big hand, because she really has been the pivotal person to make things go here. And I tell you, I was so impressed with the excellent coverage and support that we've gotten from the Daily Gazette. My goodness, without them, I tell you, we wouldn't have gotten the word out as well. But I want to first of all just kind of talk about a few things, lay out a few concepts that will help to anchor us in terms of allyship and the Allyship Institute. And so, the purpose of the Institute is to essentially train and empower people who have who want to fight against racism. Okay, and this is not an activity or program to try to convince anyone. Every expert, myself included, Kendi, Dr. Moore, we've all agreed there's no way you're going to convince hardcore racists to be anti-racist. But what we're talking about is helping to empower them who do want to fight against racism, who do want us to have a society where everyone not only is treated equally, but treated equitably. And that's what this is about. Because you see, change is hard. And we're talking about change. And we're going to certainly experience resistance. Every movement has had resistance. And so it's very important that we underscore the fact that if you're going to be an ally and if you're going to get involved in anti-racist work, the main message we want to send to you tonight is that you are not alone. You have actually joined a community. That's what this is about. It's not just about you as an individual arming yourself to go out there to fight a battle by yourself. This is a community that we're starting. And this is a battle that we plan to fight in the long term. So we want you to feel assured that as you step out and to go about this path of fighting anti-racism, you're not going to have to fight it by yourself. And so this institute certainly falls in a tradition, believe it or not, of what we saw during the civil rights movement in the 50s and the 60s. Why? Because although we've seen the videos, we've seen the shows where people are marching and singing songs, but what a lot of people don't know is that those people in the movement who participated actually were trained. You have to be trained in nonviolent techniques. It is not natural to allow yourself to be attacked and turn the other cheek. There was training that had to take place. You just couldn't show up, okay, where's the protest? In fact, I would argue one of the challenges that we're seeing today with the protests that are even now going on is the fact that it's undisciplined. There isn't the training. And of course, there are infiltrators who are trying to discredit it. So the point is that this training is that we're talking about is consistent with in the civil rights tradition. it's consistent with the teachings of Martin Luther King and the other great civil rights leaders. So we're about to embark on a very good thing, or as John Lewis said, we're about to embark on good trouble. Okay, so I just want to underscore that and the importance and the value of what we're about to do. And so let me share my screen. I prepared a few PowerPoint notes. Let's see here. Here we are. All right. And,
So, Dr. Horton, just as you're doing that, will you also go up to the top of your screen and mute everyone? That we have about 3 people who are not muted.
okay.
And only you can do that. I'm sorry, or I would do it myself. You know that.
All right. Let's see.
If you go up to everybody, you're learning something with me now. If you go up to participants,
Let
you
me.
see that?
Okay. Let me. I'm gonna have to stop sharing to do that, I think. Okay. So now, how do I mute everyone?
Is there something on the bottom? No.
Oh, wait a minute. Let's
Mute
see.
all.
See, manage participants. I think that's probably what it is. Okay.
If we can't do it, we can't do it.
Wait a minute. Let's see.
I've been trying to get in touch with folks, but
Does that work? No. I apologize. I'm relatively new.
okay. Move on.
So-
Move on.
All
I'm
right.
so sorry, Dr. Horton, for
Oh, that's
disturbing.
okay. That's okay. We
Okay.
this is all about learning, and I'm
Thank
happy
you.
about that. That's just another thing for me to figure out later. All right. And okay. So now, all right. So again, we want to look at the genesis, the nature, manifestations of racism, because people have different views and understanding what racism is. In fact, until relatively recently, most people weren't even using the term systemic racism. So we want to make sure that we're together in terms of our common concepts. All right. And so in terms of racism, I want to introduce you to a definition of racism that I personally, as a scholar, put into the discipline. Okay. And so we think about racism, we're talking about a multi-level and multi-dimensional system of dominant group oppression that scapegoats the race and or ethnicity of one or more subordinate groups. And let me break that down. And so we're talking about multi-level. We're talking about racism occurs at the societal level. It can happen at the community level. It can happen at the individual family level. Okay. And so we want to understand that we say multidimensional. What we're talking about is that racism looks different in different social contexts, in different places and different spaces. That's why for all of the different sessions that we're going to have, you start talking about mental health, you're talking about health disparities, you're talking about families. Racism is going to look different in different situations, in government, in at the university. It's going to look different. But one thing is consistent: it's systemic, and it's about dominant group oppression. And let me also help you understand something. You know, a great deal of what's happening today, in terms of some of the more overt expressions of racism, as well as what's happening in terms of attempts to try to suppress various minority groups, is because of the fact of the demographic reality that the white population is actually declining while the other populations are growing. In fact, the census data show that over the last couple of years, in fact, almost for a decade, there are more white people who died than who were born. And that's a true recipe for decline and growth, particularly with minimal immigration. And so in essence, so when we start talking about majority group and minority group, sometimes that's misleading, because while it's true, many of the racial and ethnic minority groups will be are expected to be a demographic majority in December. In December, in 2050, December 2050. Here's the reality. Sociologically speaking, a majority is whatever group controls the wealth, status, and power in society, whatever group controls the social structure. And based upon that, the white population is likely to be the majority group for a long time. And so in essence, rather than majority and minority, which oftentimes get confusing, oftentimes sociologists and scholars who study this, we use the term dominant and subordinate group to in essence truly underscore their respective places in the social structure, as well as their relationship to the power in society. And so we just want to lay that out so that we can understand that. And so we talk about racism. You know, oftentimes people get confused in thinking that we see all this inequality in society because of racism. Actually, that is the reverse is actually true. It is the inequality that has caused racism, and this is from the very beginning. Inequality in terms of there are three dimensions of it. Those are wealth, status, and power. Of these three, power is the most important one. Why? If you have power, that means that you can take somebody else's land, okay, and then practice genocide on them. If you have the power, then you can kidnap people from their own land and enslave them. Okay. And so with power, you can take wealth and set up your own status system, which is what has happened historically in the United States. So in short, it's not racism that causes inequality. It's the inequality that causes racism. And so one of the things that we want to note that here in the United States, its genesis goes all the way back to the European slave trade. And so in essence, we're talking about the Europeans enslaving Africans to build their wealth. In fact, much of the wealth of the Western world was built upon slavery. The problems that the Europeans had was that their dominant religious belief was Christianity. And as we know, Christianity has one of its basic principles: treat other human beings, I'm paraphrasing, treat other human beings as you wish to be treated. So how do you get around the enslavement of the human beings? Well, you designate them as non-humans. And in fact, racism was embedded in the very establishment of this society in this country, because in the Constitution originally, Africans were deemed as being 3/5 of a human being. Okay. And so and in the case of Native Americans, they were designated as savages. And so when you have the power to do those types of things, that is what causes it's the inequality that causes the racism, because that allows racism to be able to even exist. And so again, we said that it manifests itself at various levels. At the societal level, oftentimes we're talking about the laws that are differentially applied by race. We see it in mortgage lending, right to bear arms. Have you noticed that seemingly only white people can really bear arms, at least in public? Even in those states that say you can't. And and voter suppression. And so in a very real sense, if we can be honest, this society still treats Black people and other disadvantaged, and to a certain extent, probably lesser extent, other groups, but Black people certainly as second-class citizens. And then at the community level, we know about racial profiling. discrimination hiring, the glass ceiling. I want to tell you a story. Yesterday, I was given a talk for a colleague at the University of Virginia, and to a class, and we were talking about racism, and one of the things that she revealed is that she was an expert witness against a company that was a major corporation that was actually practicing discrimination in hiring. And one of the things they were doing on the application was in the word application, they were actually circling the N in application in a blue pencil. That would indicate that the individual was Black, but when copied, that blue circle would not really appear. It turns out, unfortunately for them, that when the records were subpoenaed, the original records came through, and they were busted. Okay, and so, but yes, discrimination in hiring still happens, and of course, the glass ceiling. And the irony is that different groups experience the glass ceiling differently. Parenthetically, Asians tend to call it the bamboo ceiling. They tend to gain relatively high status in organizations, positions, but they don't tend to be able to get leadership positions because they aren't deemed as being leadership material, generally speaking, unless they start their own business. And finally, at the micro level, we talk about microaggressions. And many of us are familiar with those, but just to kind of give you an idea, we define the actions that dismiss, devalue, or demean individuals based upon race and ethnicity. There are three basic types of microaggressions. There's the micro assault, verbal, physical violence based upon race and ethnicity. And I want you to know that when we've seen instances where you see white women actually calling the police on innocent Black people, like the woman in Central Park, well, that would also fall into the category of micro assault. Okay, there's a micro insult where people make statements to undermine or discount or objectify subordinate groups. And then there's a micro invalidation. That's to ignore or dismiss the work, the contributions or efforts of subordinate group members. There was an excellent example of this about a month or so ago on the front page of the Daily Gazette, where in the city of Schenectady, the one Black council member was trying to raise a motion about the governor's edict for local police agencies to reform. And the reality is that her motion, her statement was met with total silence. No one spoke up. Well, in the process of doing that, they in essence invalidated what she had to say. And so we're saying this is happening. And so now, one of the things that many scholars, and particularly the primary proponent of microaggressions, Professor Daryl Wing Sue at Columbia University, we often talk about the fact that microaggressions is really like the idea of death by 1,000 cuts, where minorities and subordinate group members tend to just constantly endure these little nicks and cuts every day, whether it's not necessarily a micro assault, but micro insults and micro invalidation. So a minority individual being told you're professional all your life, being told, well, you're so articulate, or in many cases, Asian Americans being told, well, okay, but where are you really from? You're born in Albany, yeah, but where are you really from? So again, these microaggressions are important for us to have a handle on. And so we talk about anti-racism. Okay, anti-racism, we're talking about actions that are directed toward changing racist structures, policies, and practices in an effort to promote an environment and community or society that's equitable. And so, in short, anti-racism is about action. It's about change. It's about changing changing those structures, those policies that perpetrate and perpetuate racism. And and of course, anti-racism is a direct attack not only on racism, white supremacy, and certainly most importantly, white privilege. One of the things that often, one of the reasons why we often see so much resistance is because when people are accustomed to white privilege, anything that looks like equity feels like discrimination to them. Okay, you're invading on white privilege, and so we could talk a little more about that. And so one of the things that we're hoping that we want to introduce and hopefully uh, participants will get from the institute is the sociological imagination. We want people to be able to develop and use the sociological imagination, and that is and that is an awareness of the forces, the social forces that are at work around you. And one of the advantages of white privilege, you could say a disadvantage, depending upon your perspective, is that one can choose to ignore the subtle manifestations of racism. And so the sociological imagination involves taking off the blinders. We have to take those blinders off so that we can begin first of all get the awareness, get the training, and get to acting towards uh, helping to abolish racism at every level of our society. And so the the Allyship Institute this is overall our hope is it's going to help you first to develop that sociological imagination, to increase your understanding of how racism works and how it looks in specific situations and settings and institutions. We want you to be able to gain the skills, the tools, and the strategies to combat racism. And finally, to reiterate a point, we want to introduce you to a community of anti-racists so that you know that you are not alone. Now, one of the challenges that people who want to be anti-racist, people want to be allies have is the fear, in some cases, of standing out and not having the support. And so oftentimes it's that fear that that compels people to be quiet, to be silent, even when they see racism occurring. By being part of a community, what we're hoping is you can see that there's a strength behind you. There's people not only who support you, but also people that you can turn to for advice and counsel, and people who can work with you to address a particular issue. That's what the Allyship Institute is all about. And so I want to pause here so we can have time for questions. But I just want to say that the whole idea of this institute is truly an amazing thing, because no longer are we saying, well, okay, we'll wait just to vote, or we know things will get better. No. We're talking just like during the civil rights movement. You had committed people who stood up, who got trained, and who moved forward to try to make the society a better society. We're talking about people who, in essence, made a decision that they were going to get into good trouble. So I'm going to pause right here, and thank you for listening to me. And I look forward to hearing and hopefully answering your questions. Yes, Janice, you can unmute yourself. You have to unmute. You have to unmute. I can't hear you. Unmute. Hello?
none of us can unmute us ourselves.
Oh my goodness, I have to unmute you? Oh, okay. I didn't know how to mute you. So. All right, let's see something. Oh no, Michael is the host now. Michael's the host now, so he'll unmute us. So Michael, unmute us. Unmute everyone. Michael? Michael?
Okay,
Okay, there we go.
so I am back. Janice, 1 second.
Yep.
So our friends at Proctor's and our director muted everybody because some of you won't mute yourselves. So I'm begging you, if you're not going to ask a question to Dr. Horton, if you can hear my voice, please put yourself on mute because a combination of things are happening. We're getting weird sounds, and we're also getting, when some of you are making noise, it's going to you. The camera feature is going to you. So we're either seeing you or we're seeing a black screen. So like right now. So, but I'm going to kick it back over to Dr. Horton. I think he's going to call on Janice, and we're going to get some questions and answers going.
All right.
So thank you all for your patience.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi. In earlier programs, there have been a couple about allyship. And one of the things it mentioned is that especially white people should not go in, rushing into the fire of racism to save our Black brothers and sisters, and so if I'm correct on the programs were one of our jobs as white people, because we do have privilege, is to listen and really listen. What is this community's unique need, rather than doing what white people have done so often, go into a place and think they've got it. And so one of the things that with allyship, it seems to be we need to have meetings with the community to hear their needs rather than impose what we think. And so my question is that something that after we've had some training, that's another step that needs to happen?
Absolutely, but there are ways of so now we actually are talking about interacting with the community, and there is a proper way of doing that. And the way to do that is you have to honor the existing leadership. All right, and so because the existing leadership represents the gateway to the community. You don't just start engaging the community on your own. Okay. You don't want to assume that nothing is going on when you have some organizations that have been doing things for decades. However, in many cases, these organizations, while working, they may very well have been under-resourced, et cetera, et cetera. So you want to talk to the leadership and then get a sense with the leadership how you can partner with the leadership to help them achieve their goals. That's the proper way to do things, okay? And in fact, what happens that way is that is the way to get credibility, all right? Just to give you a quick idea, early on, I guess some 30 years ago, when I was a young professor, and I was actually doing community development and what have you, work with communities, one of the first things I did was to, based upon my training, was to actually contact the existing leadership. I have a very vivid memory of going to Waterloo, Iowa, and speaking to the leader there. They had their own community radio station, and it just so happens I had met the leader a couple of years before. He was delighted when I was at Iowa State, and I wanted to work with him and the community. And he said, "Well, come with me." We went down to a basement. I said, "Man, what is this guy carrying me?" And did I say the wrong thing? And so, and he had a state-of-the-art radio station, and he flicked the switch, and he said, "I have Dr. Horton here from Iowa State University, and he's planning to do some studies to try to help us with some of the issues that we have in the community." And then he said something I couldn't pay for. He said, "Dr. Horton is a good man. I want you to give him all the help that you can." I got immediate credibility because this is a Black community, but just because I'm Black doesn't mean I can go into a community where I'm not a part of.
Right.
Without the support leadership. I hope I didn't over answer that question for you.
Yes. I had the experience this summer of helping with Sikkim lunch program. You know, they go all around, they do lunches in various places. And I happened to go to the Jerry Bruel Park. That was where our church needed to go. And I talked with the superintendent there for the week. Her name was DeVoe is her first name, and I don't know what her last name is, but you could tell she was someone who knew her community. And I went over a couple different days, and it was wonderful to talk with her as a community person. And we just had wonderful conversations. But it's like, how do you meet those people, you know, that you can learn something? And that's going to be really important to do. Thank you. I will now go mute.
Thanks, Mike. Okay. Thank you, Janice. Excellent comments. Some other comments.
So folks, you might get a screen that comes up that says unmute. If you push the unmute or stay muted, if you want to stay muted, but if you want to actually talk to Dr. Horton, we're going to take maybe one or two more questions, because for the second week in a row, we've just been plagued with crazy technical problems, and I just don't know why. We have people back at Proctor's organizing all of this for us. We're just finding weird little bugs in the system. So a screen will come up and says unmute yourself. If not, if you want to put, I will not mute myself anymore. I will stay unmuted. And if folks want to put questions in the chat box, I see we're joined by a lot of people, and other people watching on Facebook. There are a lot of people watching this, and I know they're not looking to watch me struggle with the technology of this. So if anybody else has a question and they want to unmute themselves, they can push that box or they can put it in the chat.
I would like to say something.
Yeah.
Please,
Cranch,
Marina.
Yeah. This is to address what Janice just said. There are a lot of ways to get involved where the leadership is people of color, Black, Indigenous, other people of color. Citizens Action is one group. You can certainly Google them and find out what actions they're working on to combat racism. Another group is the Poor People's Campaign Fighting Racism. Another group is Vocal New York, which is geared toward New York State. That's a group that I've recently joined. So there are ways to actually hook up with people that are working with non-white leadership to tackle social issues where actually the problem is solidified. So you actually know what it is. You can pull an issue out of a morass of intersectional inequities, and you could decide what is a feasible, doable campaign that you can create tactics for. So these three groups, I highly recommend that you become familiar with them and find out what they're doing.
Thank you, Marina. That was very well said. And I know you've really dug into this work. I hear from you regularly about your thoughts about all of this. So thank you for sharing that. I don't know if Dr. Olson or Dr. Horton have some thoughts about, well, Dr. Olson may have some thoughts, but he can't he can't share them. I'm dying a slow death here. You all know that, right? Dr. Horton, do you have anything to say about Marina? And then I have a question from the chat box.
Well, she's absolutely right. There are a number of groups in various local communities that are actively fighting racism on a daily basis, and join those groups. You know, there's the NAACP of Schenectady, there's NAACP of Albany. Okay, so there are a number of groups that are doing similar things, and so one doesn't have to go at it alone. But most importantly, the proper approach is to work with that leadership. Okay, and as opposed to trying to soldier on your own, and perhaps being somewhat ineffective, to say the least. But yes, please honor the existing leadership.
Thank you, Dr. Horton. We have a wonderful question here from Susan Cummings, and I'm touched. I could barely get through it. Would the Allyship Institute consider working with colleges and universities on training?
Oh, absolutely.
If they're invited. So Susan is afraid that maybe I'll just show up on somebody's doorstep, and I understand that because I have that way.
Here's the thing. We have an open door policy. So if college students want to get involved, heck, if college presidents want to get involved, then the more the merrier. We believe that the more people that we have committed to anti-racism, the stronger this movement will be. And so the short answer to that, to your question, is an emphatic yes.
That's wonderful.
It's like Jerry has a comment.
She can't unmute herself, but if she could.
Can she, Jerry, can you put your question in the text?
Thank you for your patience.
We do appreciate the patience. I guess really we all have to have a training session on the proper usage of Zoom, so we can figure out all these. Now, it's just crazy that we're having challenges, but what's exciting to me is that in spite of these challenges, we're soldiering on and we're doing the good work. So let's see what Jerry. Oh, okay.
Okay. Well,
I know. Well,
I think Jerry's still typing. We'll let her type for a minute.
Jerry's still typing.
And I'm hearing from some folks talking about the lack of funding, and obviously that is a critical issue right now, the lack of state funding, especially to our school districts locally and throughout the state. I think many of us, and I know a couple of weeks ago during one of our challenge check-ins, we were talking about, we weren't sure what was yet to come, but we were very concerned about what was going to happen in education. And I believe now all our worst nightmares have come true. What we have seen these school districts battling terrifyingly. I don't know what's going to happen with these children. And I know, Dr. Horton, you have some very strong opinions about that. Maybe you want to share some of your thoughts. Jerry can finish typing. We'll let her have the last word, and then I'll just wrap up with folks.
This is, I think it's really tragic what's happened to education, not only in this state, but throughout the country. If you recall, several months ago, Governor Cuomo was actually advocating and for the federal government to basically reimburse the states for all of the expenses from dealing with the COVID pandemic, and yet that reimbursement has not been forthcoming. So, in a very real sense, uh, Governor Cuomo and a number of us who really have a good understanding of just how interconnected and dependent upon state funding so many of us are, so many entities are, we could see this coming. And unfortunately, unless there is a change in Washington, I can't see this problem being resolved or handled in a proper fashion in the near future. I think that in this state and perhaps throughout the country, there's going to be a lot of hurt in the educational field in terms of people being laid off.
Mhm.
And I believe that the recession that we're currently in could potentially slip into a depression without the proper intervention.
And I know many of you are putting things in the chat, very concerned about these funding issues. I can tell you, we as a leadership group have talked about it. We are trying to figure out our best approach in terms of trying to weigh in and at least continue to shed light. And I think the greatest thing that we really can do is show that we are allies. It doesn't matter where in the capital region you live. If the Schenectady City School District can't educate our kids, the Albany City School District can't even get the kids in the door, that impacts all of us.
Oh, yeah.
No matter where you live, no matter what stage of life you're in, it absolutely impacts all of us. Jerry's question is it's a question I get asked all the time. So I'm going to read it. And would you be able to speak to us at some point about how best to respond to racist sentiments in our everyday lives? Someone I know told me that he did not believe there was racism in the United States. I responded that there is a system that works well for us. He is also white, but it doesn't work well for many people. I also said that change is hard and it's scary to people who have advantage to do what seems to them like giving up their advantage. I wish I had been coached on what to say. Jerry, you are the second person today to say something like that to me.
Mm.
So if we get away with nothing else to be able to talk, and we talked about this in one of our first challenges, how do we talk to our friends and neighbors? How do we talk to that uncle that's just, and that's really one of the gifts that I believe that Dr. Horton has been able to give us. So Jerry said a lot there. I think it's something we're all thinking. So, Dr. Horton, help us work through this. And if we could ever get Dr. Olson unmuted, maybe sometime he'll tell us about it. But Dr. Horton, what do you say?
What I say is this. When we start talking about racists, it's very difficult. It's very difficult to change someone who's hardcore. The fact is that in many cases, a lot of it has to do with socialization in terms of how they were raised. And in some cases, it has to do with the fear of the loss of white privilege. And in some cases, it's a combination of both. So you're right. In fact, I actually have neighbors too in my community. And I'm pretty certain that there are many who fall in a similar category. One way that I've actually dealt with some things is, but first of all, I guess in a very real sense, I don't necessarily relate to them from the standpoint of talking politics. I relate to them as just as human beings. And in fact, one of the things that I decided, because when I first got there, it seemed like I was the black guy I guess I still am the black guy on the block and what have you, but obviously I could see some fear and concern. But in my case, I like people. So I decided I was gonna make sure that everybody on this street spoke to me. And so I started speaking to everybody. When everybody was swinging by, I would wave. I would stop and make small talk, to the point where, more so than anybody else, I don't care who it is on my street. You live on my street, you see Doc, you're gonna wave, because I'm the friendliest guy on the street. And I guess in a way, one of the things that we have to do is that, in spite of the fact, we can basically be against racism, and realize that even these races, or people who might espouse racist beliefs, also are multidimensional human beings.
Mhm.
And so what I try to do is to relate people in other dimensions. And one of the things that, in the process of doing that, I don't have to have them say to me, I didn't realize that as a Black guy, you were like this, you were like me. And because I just basically, I refused. I was determined that I was not going to let their racism get in the way of my having a relationship. Okay. And so now the reality is that there's some people, whether you're talking about with work, or you got that crazy uncle who's going to say stuff at Thanksgiving. Sometimes you're going to have to let crazy uncle be crazy uncle. But one way that what you can do is to make sure that when crazy uncle says his off the wall and racist comment, what you can do is to say, well, crazy uncle, I know you say that, and you might just believe that, but here are some reasons why that's not really the case. Okay. And because maybe you can't do anything about crazy uncle, but everybody else around the Thanksgiving table just might be open to hearing what you're saying. And so some of those people might not be as far to the right, or I don't know if that's the right, but as crazy uncle. And so perhaps you can get them to say, well, you know what? You got a good point there. And so that's what I would say, from the standpoint of, whenever you see it, continue. Yeah, it's disheartening, but continue to basically state the facts. And then pretty soon, crazy uncle might get tired of hearing facts, and might stop saying those things, at least around you. Again, that was a long-winded answer to a question, but I do believe that one of the things that we're going to have to do is we have to stop making caricatures of even those people who are racist, but because maybe because on some other dimension, maybe we can perhaps reach these people and turn them around. I don't know if you got that kind of time. You might just want to just ignore them and associate with folk who are right-minded. But anyway, I that's exactly what I did. And I turned my street around, my whole block around.
There you have it. Dr. Olson is recommending White Fragility. I know we've talked about that book a number of times on these sessions. And he strongly recommends that book. He talks to me about it all the time. So those of you who are interested in reading more, that one, I know that Marina is also, and I know that's one of our recommended books, is So You Want to Talk About Race? And that's another great one. And it was recommended. One of our other trainers, Natasha, is on this this session with us, and she says something very smart. She must know my crazy uncle. Allowing others to know that you don't support crazy uncle's rhetoric is key, and that's really a strong form of allyship. You can't choose your family, and I think that's very well said. And a number of you have wonderful compliments for Jerry and what she shared with us today. So we're going to try this again on Friday at 12:30. I'm hoping that by then we can master the mute and unmute buttons. But please join us. Everyone is welcome at any of these sessions. You know, we've tried to break them out, carve them out. You know, Dr. Horton was just getting warmed up in an hour to talk about allyship. But so we've just tried to carve it down to smaller topics. But everyone is welcome. And the session on Friday, sponsored by the Bethlehem Chamber of Commerce and Maureen McGinnis, who I know many of you know, Coach Carmen, who is a young trainer. She's really terrific. She's a very interesting woman, is going to talk to us about the workplace, hiring in the workplace, anti-racism in the workplace. And, you know, and what she focuses on is in what seems like a homogeneous community. So, you know, everybody thinks that everybody's like this. And, you know, how do we expand very specifically the workplace? But really, I think it applies to so many walks of life. I talked in the beginning of this about the book that we are reading as a community, Begin Again. The Friends of the Library and the Schenectady County Public Library are not only suggesting we read this book, they are bringing in the author on October 6th through their generosity at a time when, you know, it would be nice to do something as a community. I think we're all feeling sort of isolated. And even if we can do it this way, I think we really feel connected. And they even, as part of the deal to bring in Dr. Glaude, were able to get a small number of copies of the book. So in addition to the copies that they would have had at the library, they'll have additional copies. We can get in touch with Karen Bradley at the library, the director of the library, and make arrangements, because obviously they're just doing curbside delivery at the library right now. But if folks would like to read this prior to Dr. Glaude's visit on October 6th, please get in touch with Karen Bradley at the library. We've also made up these wonderful handouts, these bookmarks, and they have a number of the books that are recommended in additional readings on the back of it. The staff at the library have been tremendous partners through all of this, but I look forward to anybody who would like to join us on Friday at 12:30 to talk about more of this with another great trainer. Please join us. And I'm going to spend between now and then learning how to mute and unmute folks. So I want to thank you all. I certainly want to thank Dr. Olson. It's always wonderful to spend time with him. I want to thank everybody who got on this call, and our director, our leader, Dr. Horton. Thank you for a wonderful evening. Really terrific. Really, really. If we weren't muted, you'd hear how loud we were all yelling and screaming and clapping. Thank you all for your patience. We're trying here. Thank you all. I'll see you again on Friday. Bye now, everyone.
Thank you, Denise.
Thank you,
Thank
Denise.
you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.